Okay, so we are here doing this, The Art of Personal Growth, with my buddy Johnny Clark. I don't know how much y'all know of um, my story or Johnny's story. I'll give you a brief. We're gonna do a deep dive into Johnny's story, which is awesome, and I'll give you a two 20-second synopsis on my story. I started my career as an attorney. I hated that job. I had a panic attack 30 days into that job. And so after about 9 months, I quit that job and I started an escape room business. And I thought that I was moving from law to entrepreneurship. And I was an entrepreneur for 7 years. And then my spouse at the time got cancer and went through a cancer journey, and there was probably the darkest period of my life where I met Johnny, and Johnny was kind of exploring Johnny had gone through law school as well, so we had this shared connection of the hell of law, which I advise everyone to avoid to the extent possible. And it is possible because no one should do that. And Johnny was at this stage where he was starting to paint and like do more artistic things. And I came from a law and entrepreneurial background, and it was very intriguing to me that he was taking this artistic bend. And I never consider myself artistic, but being around Johnny's story kind of inspired me to start writing again, which I hadn't done since I was a little kid. I had a speech impediment as a little kid, and I would write because it was the way that I felt comfortable expressing myself. And I ultimately ended up writing a book called The Creator's Call, which is kind of about how to find creativity in your life again and the power that creativity can bring to you if you give it space. And that was it was a very difficult process for me to do. And Johnny was a linchpin in that process for me, and seeing his story and the courage that he had in sharing what he was doing. And so we are both very passionate about the power that if you allow for more creativity in your life. And for me as a lawyer and a business guy to now be talking about creativity feels very awkward to me, but it just simply is the thing that has had a huge impact in my life. And Johnny has been a key part of me finding the courage to express that and to go deeper into that. And so I thought that it would be cool to hear his story again, share his story, and kind of see what happened behind the curtain, to the extent that whatever's happening in your life, I don't care where you're at financially, economically, relationally, spiritually, if you allow yourself more space to allow a creative power in your life to come forth, it will be, I think it will improve all areas of your life. And so Johnny will be talking about his outlet of art and drawing, and I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. And so the important thing for me, as you hear the story, I'll probably counterbalance it in some ways with writing or entrepreneurship. I guess the most important thing is don't get stuck on the specific medium that Johnny talks about if you're not artistic in the conventional sense of the word, because that's what kind of blocked me for a long time. Um, and so that is the intro. And again, if you have any questions or something to add, or some way that you are stuck in some way as you hear Johnny's story, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'll be watching it, and I'll interrupt him, and we'll make it happen. And with that, I would like to present to the stage Mr. Johnny Clark Dark Art.
Hey, thank you so much. And hey, thank you. I'm seeing a few names here. I do want to give a special shout out, and I may touch on his art later. But Hafiz Karim is tuning in from Singapore, an artist I really looked up to who almost changed their art online overnight. So I bet many of you have seen his art and didn't realize it, but the next most famous artist, he does poetry with some really strong imagery. Some of you on here actually probably follow him or have seen it, but just wanted to make a shout out joining from Singapore. So if anybody else is from out of the country, and Lisa in Canada, but just I'm excited, Raleigh. So I give this presentation actually at my day job, which is a dream come true because it's actually just my life, and I get to connect art and business. And so I'd say for some of you, you may identify yourselves as an artist. Both Raleigh and I have a lot of deep business background and deep business expertise. And art, I believe, helps business people do better in their day jobs. But then, if you're an artist, a lot of artists, and I'll talk about this later, they want to understand the business side of things better. And so as I've gotten more into my art and I've connected with both executives and artists, I'm seeing an opportunity for me to be a bridge builder. And I would say that's even beyond art and business. It's whether it's belief systems, whether it's friendships, whether it's politics. I think my call is to connect people and try to help find common ground. And this is such a cool opportunity. And so I just appreciate it, Raleigh. I get fired up on this. So
just before you get started,
yeah.
in the chat, if you were to put down the identity, like at least the work identity that you ascribe to the most, whether that's an artist, an entrepreneur, a business guy, a lawyer, if you
a
just
parent, a father,
a stay-at-home mom, whatever it is that you think is your job that you do currently, not necessarily what you aspire to be, but who you think you are, just so we know whether it's more artistic leaning or business leaning or something else.
Awesome. All right. So again, this will be Raleigh. Feel free to jump in, or if you see questions, I can't see the chat as well while I'm presenting. So this is again the art of personal growth. One of my most favorite quotes, and actually Raleigh, you introduced this to me, and I see it hanging in your back left on my screen, is that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And so one of the things I would ask each of you to kind of maybe take a deep breath and be willing to be curious about is there something that you have felt some energy towards that you have been reluctant to look at, or you've been reluctant to address, or maybe you've been scared because you want it so badly, you're finding excuses and reasons that it's not going to happen or it's not possible. So that's kind of the backdrop as we head into this. But I really love the thought of what's my next cave? What's the thing that I'm being called towards, but that I'm scared of, but that actually inside might have a treasure? So I have I think I can say this because I'm in my own personal setting. I'm not in the work setting, but I have a huge crush on Frida Kahlo. I think I can say that out loud. But she is a Mexican artist, but she has deep, her parents, her father was from Europe, and her mother has Mexican roots. And a lot of her art shows her, and this is the two Fridas, this duality, this living in two places. You can see the heritage represented. You can see she actually painted a lot with love, but sorrow and pain and conflict. But the reason I have this crush on Frida is she was so authentic. Like if you read her words, you see her clips, her art, she was so unapologetic. She was just fully herself. And I love that. And this is a quote from her. Nothing is absolute. Everything changes, everything moves, everything revolves, everything flies and goes away. And, I used to ascribe to the idea that some things can be forever. And I do believe that a lot of principles can be. But when I look around in nature, that's actually the beauty of it is you can capture and be present in moments. And the fact that they're not permanent is actually the thing that makes them special. And so to me, creativity is about creating something unique that is present, that may end up going away. And that's the beauty of our lives as a canvas. How do I create a unique life? So that's kind of the backdrop here as well, is life is fluid and things will look different in a year, in 5 years, and in 10 years. And the more I allow that and look forward with optimism around that or excitement, the better it is versus trying to think in a scarcity mentality and hanging on. So that's my plug for Frida. If you're following my art account, you're going to see a lot of art of Frida coming up. So stay tuned. So that was kind of my call to each of you is maybe just remove your labels. So Raleigh asked you to put those in the chat. This is an exercise I do with executives is identity we attribute a lot of our work product, or maybe our religion, or maybe our sex, or our sexual preferences. We put labels on ourselves that automatically may diminish our potential. And so I'd say for tonight, I'm going to talk you through my story. I'd say remove your labels and be present and think of yourself just as a soul or as a being. And I think you'll be able to tap into some memories for you that are going to connect you to say, you know what, maybe I am creative. It doesn't mean you use fine art like I do, but maybe you are creative if you allow yourself to remove your label. When you say, oh, I'm not a creative or I'm not an artist, you're labeling yourself. So I just invite you as we go through this conversation to remove those labels. So if you follow my Instagram, I've shared, I think that top left image like 10 times, but I love it. This is me doing portraits of the family. Mike is on today. So this guy on the far left, my dad, he's got his glasses on. My mom, you'll notice I was pretty modest. I drew a little baby bump, and I actually think my sister Heather is on the call or on this webinar. That's her. She's in my mom's tummy at that age, in there. And I was pretty modest with drawing my mom with the baby bump, I think. But my favorite is, if you look, this is me, the next kind of middle kid. I think I drew a beard on myself at age 6. So that's cool. But what was fun for me, so I want you to think, like, for those of us that are 80s or 90s kids, it was a Saturday morning. I'm watching Ninja Turtles. Probably we've got the worn down carpet. I've got a bowl of cereal. I've got a stack of sketchbooks, and I'm just drawing. I'm not planning on sharing it with anyone. I'm not in my head about what will people think. Like, I'm doing this activity genuinely because I enjoy it. And I think, unfortunately, because we have social media, it makes us afraid to even sketch or create or write poetry or take photos, because we automatically go to, like, what if somebody else sees this? What would someone else think? Or they might tease me. And so this kind of gave me courage, because, and I'll talk about it later, but I look back and I was like, I love drawing people, animals, and a little bit of myth or symbolism. That duality existed in 1998 subconsciously for me. That was a purely organic creation that I had of a pipe, a bridge builder, a hands, machine, and art. So it's just really cool for me to look back and validate what I'm doing 20 years later was actually rooted in me. And like many of us, we grow up, right? We grow up, and I got my first big kid job. Like Raleigh and I were going through this deck, and I started singing Backstreet Boys. I did, Raleigh, didn't I?
You sure did.
But I was so excited to get a big kid corporate job finally. I had never thought of myself as a corporate guy, but I was thankful. It was a good job in financial services, but that was kind of the beginning of the end of my art, kind of circa 2000, call it. I think my art significantly deteriorated because I was growing up. I was getting a family, working, and like, what place does art have in my life anymore?
And can I hop in here, Johnny, real fast?
Yeah,
I think again, when I see this with Johnny, it's very easy for me to look at how great that picture looks in 1998 and be like, yeah, but I don't have a parallel of something. I don't have this gift that really manifested itself early, like this art thing. This is a big thing that I struggled with. Because I'm not conventionally artistic. But as I looked back at my life, I think a question that could be helpful to the extent that you don't know maybe where a creative outlet is, and it could be in entrepreneurship, it could be in business, it could be in your job. It doesn't have to be something that's conventionally artistic. But I think that, Johnny, you would probably say that, like, that little rectangle that exists was a eminently safe place for you to express that you felt safety in the expression. And so for me, sports like the football field and the tennis court, those were two places that I felt safe to, physically express myself. And then also the written page, like for me, when I had a crush on a girl, I wouldn't sit down and write poetry and prose or try to write War and Peace.
You passing poetry, cute notes in class?
No, I wrote it and I was too scared to share it. I wrote it and then I put
That
it on
was
my
your social
drawer.
media. That was your social
Yeah,
you
which is
created, but
still
you
kind of what
kept
I
it
do.
secret.
I like usually if me and Roth work on something, I'm like, I'm not. This is too good to share with anybody else. I'm keeping this to myself. And
Oh, you're
and so
smart.
so one of the questions that you may ask yourself is, if you're not a drawer or whatever, is when I was a kid and I felt an emotion that was hard for me to deal with, where did I find safe? Where was a safe place for me? And what was that? It could be
Yeah.
on the stage if you were an actor. It could be singing with in the
Well,
radio, whatever it was. A lot of times it's a process of going back to that skill that you just organically develop. You know, John, I don't know if you were taking art classes at this time, but it just kind of like organically developed into this, and it's beautiful for him because it's this very visual thing, and yours may not be as visual like mine wasn't, but I can guarantee you that there was some way that you found to express yourself, and if you just think about it, you may find that that is an interesting starting place for you.
well, I would just say, Rod, like I'm admitting guilt. I said don't label yourself. I just call myself an artist. But like if you experienced me during these years, I'd say I was much more than this. I was the class clown. I enjoy making people laugh. Play is a big part of my identity, and that's a creative outlet as well. So even solving hard problems, people that do Rubik cubes, like these are all manifestations of creativity. So I think that's an important call out, is not thinking of arts in the more literal sense, which could be true, but it's also in the business sense. I can't tell you how fun it is for me to solve really big business problems at the highest levels, because it takes creative power.
Yeah.
So that, look, I grew up, the story here that I really emphasize, that I won't go into as much detail at night, as I started this big kid job, but I'm in the middle here. I'm actually to the left of the gal in red there. I look a little different now. But this kid, for the first time, I was 4 years in at Fidelity, and I went to my first in-person appointment. I was great at sales over the phone, but it was finally in person. I remember one of my first appointments, and if you're familiar with 2008, the year 2008, huge market crash. For the first time, I'm in this like oversized suit, and I'm sitting down, and this retiring executive comes to sit down with me, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's going to ask me, and I've got a secret. I've got a secret that I don't know how to handle, and the secret was I did not have an undergraduate degree. So here I was at this huge financial institution. I've got these industry licenses, and I've got this executive sitting down. I'm like 25 years old. And he's like, he's giving me his life investment. And I'm like, oh no, I don't have an education. He's getting, and sure enough, he did. Where'd you get your education? And so what happened was, and my dad will appreciate this, who's on here, is, I was encouraged, like, hey, you do need to get your degree. It really wasn't about the information, but it was about, for me, my cave at the time was, I felt an insecurity of self in this industry. So I ended up going back to school, which was amazing. And I got my undergrad. And then for whatever reason, for a different workshop, I ended up getting my MBA and my law degree a lot later in life. And I've really been proud of my ability to lean into the academic side of things, because I've always identified myself maybe more as an artist, but that was my cave at the time. And that, again, we'll talk about that later. But really, this was the impetus for, I'd done all my education, and I felt like something was still missing. My life on the outside looked incredible, I think, from on paper. And I'm saying that, and I hope it doesn't sound too kind of self-confident, but like I had worked really hard to have the house and the family, and we had a pool in the backyard, and we had a gym in the basement. It was like all of these things, but yet I just knew there was something else missing as part of my core. And I'm talking to my son. You can see on the top right, I actually am on my tippy toes on that photo, because I had to show my son I was still a little bit taller, at least look that way. And he said to me, we're having a conversation, and he's like, Dad, what was life like when you were my age? Do you remember it? For all of us here, like, I don't know about you, but I'm like still 17 in my brain in a lot of ways. But I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had like this flashback of when I was his age. I had a lot of art hanging up, like these drawings I made. Like art was such a big part of my identity, and like there's a sadness because I was like, my son's gonna leave my house at 17, 18 years old, and he's never like, he doesn't know me as a creator. He doesn't even know me as an artist. And that really kind of hit me of like a desire to be better known for my full self, for things that I enjoy. And so it's ironic. I put together these three core values. So in big corporate, you get sent off quite often to workshops, and especially in the leadership space. And I came up with these three core values. These are kind of like, think of it as, these were my lead. This is my leadership religion, if you will. And I made a commitment 18 years ago that every team I would become a part of and that I would lead in the corporate world, I would share my core values to hold myself accountable to these. And so I've kept that promise for 18 years. Every new job, every new team I've become a part of, I share these three core values. And my first is integrity of self. What that means is I can't look to others to determine what is best or right for me. If I'm honest with myself, no boss or other person is ever going to ask me to do more than what I'm going to want to do of self. What is right for myself is going to keep my soul alive and happy. Optimism in the future. I'm a big proponent of abundance. Is the glass half empty? Is the glass half full? I'm just naturally a believer that things will work out. And then the last one is love of life. You should do things you enjoy with people you care about. That's really corporate code for play. So if any of you have experienced me in real life, play is so important to me. I love to play. I love to have fun. I love to tease. And if I'm in an environment that isn't present, I really struggle. And so the reason I like saying this out loud, especially in the corporate setting, is I'm giving permission and I'm putting on notice for everyone around me that I am probably going to be playful. And it's difficult when you're in a more serious financial services setting, right, to be playful. But I've actually found I connect with more, like people feel safer, and then it allows things to actually happen even better in the work setting. Now, the reason I've given you this background is here I'm like preaching these things for 18 years, and yet my son's leaving. I had not been honoring self. I had not been honoring gifts or talents that I was passionate about, and I wasn't following that energy. And then that was when I really made the decision, like, no, I'm going to reincorporate art back into my life.
And I have two, I guess the question before I get to my ancillary point is, at this stage when your son's getting close to go to college, how do you feel? And like in the job, are you like, it's time for me to move on? I feel stultified by this. I feel stuck. Or you like,
Yeah.
where were you at in terms of on
So
a scale of 1 to 10 fulfillment wise in your career?
yeah, I'd say it. There were so many aspects I loved, but I definitely like I left. I actually left Fidelity to go to be the head of sales for a startup. And I was so excited to have something different. My belief in hindsight, I ended up coming back to Fidelity 9 months later. And what happened was my identity got detached. I finally allowed myself to detach from my corporate identity, and I realized how awesome I actually felt like my company was. And it clicked for me. I think a lot of people think their job is what's causing burnout. I actually don't think that's the case. It's the gap between your true self and what you're presenting. And I learned in that process that so my satisfaction was I'd say it varied. It depended on the role, it depended on where I was. But I did genuinely feel like, oh, if I get this next thing, then I'll be happy. And this experience of leaving, and then I left. Not only was I the head of sales for this startup, I then bought a franchise. I was like, I'm free now. So I bought into a franchise. Again, story for another day. The amount of money that I lost on that thing is embarrassing. And here I was like thinking I'm finally free. And it wasn't these outer things. It was actually me. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. So that was what happened. And it was the inability to love self that I think, and I'm still working on that, by the way. I mean, it's causing still life choices to say, how do I learn to love all parts of myself?
Yeah. And I'll make one point as well on play, because I think to those that come from a more maybe business background, which is where I came from a family of work, you put your shoulder to the wheel, and life is about work, and idle hands are the devil's workshop. And one of the most successful guys, actually the most successful guy that I know, who is a billionaire, who I became friends with while I was practicing law. Um, One of the most interesting things as I got more and more involved in his life was how much he focuses on having fun with in just his
I mean,
life.
I'd
And
have fun too if I was a billionaire, bro. So.
no, no, that's what, and it's actually the condition that precedes it, not the
I would
condition
give
that
it all
follows
away,
it.
by the way. I'd give it to everybody. Just,
Like, but he became a mentor of mine, and he's still a mentor of mine. And so when I told him that I was leaving, for me, I had this idea that if I wanted to be as successful as he was, that I needed to grind my way there, and it needed to be miserable. And the more that I associated with him, the more that I saw how, and the reason why he focuses on fun is because he knows that it is it's the best way to persuade anyone to do anything. Like if you focus on obligation or duty or anything else, if you can just focus on how fun the process will be, how fun the journey will be, um, it can bring talented people into your orbit, and they will catch that desire. And so a lot of times when I hear, even still, I have to like do the mental work of like when I hear play as a focus, I'll like try to it still is in my nature of like, no, no, it's about work. But when I allow myself to play, um, it's when creativity begins to flow, and it's an opening process that gets you in the right frequency of solving things in a different way.
that's good. And what I would say too for people listening, and it's like, what the hell does this have to do with anything we're talking about? I think what I learned though is I'm saying play, but love of life, it's what I'm learning is a lot of really powerful creativity comes out of the love of life, that like life actually includes all the emotions. And so it might actually be deep sorrow. It could be anger, like expressing creatively. Like for me, it's play, but for another person, it may not be play. And
It's
that's
an acceptance of life. I
it,
accept life.
yeah, and then creating in that space. So for me, it's been play, but then as time has gone on, I'm like, that's also maybe an escape sometimes from some of the deeper things, and how can I incorporate that? So that was my impetus, like on my, again, my son. And so I started. I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And by the way, I really, it's maybe in a funny way. I thought of, that'd be funny to become quote unquote some kind of influencer, but my goal was really to hold myself accountable. That integrity of self was like, all right, every day I've got to make the goal so small that I'm almost guaranteed that I can't have an excuse that why I didn't do it. And so I told myself, I'm like, I'm just going to sketch 15 minutes a day. I'm going to call it prideless art. What that means is I'm embodying that little boy who is sitting cross-legged on the carpet, watching Ninja Turtles with the cereal and the stack of sketches. And I'm just going to draw. I'm not going to care what anyone else thinks. And then I'm going to post it. And then the play part for me was I'm going to also tag, I'm going to tag art supply stores, and I'm going to joke that I just want one free stick of charcoal. And so these were the goals that I put down. And so I started I'd never had a public Instagram account until the 3 years ago. And I just started posting my sketches, and then I started being open to the energy that was calling me. So again, it's continued to be people, animals, and myth, like those three themes, which people be like, yeah, that's everything. But those three themes like continued for me. And it was kind of wild, but again, a story for another day, but I started to test with charcoal, and I tested with charcoal on wood. And there was something intuitive with charcoal as a medium. The best way I can explain it is I feel like somehow my subconscious was like it must have been creating, because for me, the charcoal has been, I've tried painting and I will. I'm going to continue to expand in a lot of other mediums. I'm actually super excited about it. But I was just following the thread of what was calling me, and it was so much fun. So these are a few of the images. I'm going to talk about that top left image here in a minute, but um, each of these represents something different for me and the people that they're associated with. And I will tell you, while it was extremely validating to get responses from social media when I was posting my art, in fact, I have a lot of other artists, when they saw my growth, they're like, oh, I get it. I need to get into charcoal now, and that's how I'll grow. Or I get it. I need to do wildlife. And I was like, no, no, no. I have all the analytics on my side. I can tell you why and where which reels actually were getting followers versus that are just getting likes or nothing at all. And I use this as the example to talk about. So this was my first paid, what I'd say, big kid commission. I had sold a few sketches, and an awesome client of mine reached out. This is the first time her becoming my client. And she said, hey, I really love bears. I've got a cabin in Jackson Hole, and I had just done a buffalo on a piece of wood. And I'd just seen this image. And this image had called to me for a few reasons. I saw this bear, and in the bear, I saw tiredness, I saw sadness. And I love wildlife because I think that animals are a disarming way. Like, no matter what your political affiliation is or your background or job, like all of us, I believe all of us like have an animal or two that we are drawn to, or like we watch the National Geographic. Like, isn't that so powerful? Like, Mother Nature connects us all. And so I like putting myself at times in a few of my art pieces. I like putting myself in the shoes of, so I was putting myself in the shoes of this bear. Now, this is a mama bear in my mind. And I'm thinking, this mama bear, she looks tired to me. And why would that be? And I thought about, has this bear been in any fights with other bears? Have they slipped and fell down the mountain, and maybe they've got like a broken leg, or it's cold and they have to eat a lot of food, and they've got to like also get their kids fed, ready for hibernation. And it just felt like it was representing to me the cold, hard nature of the world, and that the world doesn't care. Like, winter is coming. The winter doesn't care about your feelings. And that's the provider's burden. So I named this piece The Provider's Burden, and I put kind of a little poem with it that, and maybe some of you on here can relate, and it like makes me emotional, because I think what I was seeing was myself of, man, I'm tired, but like the world doesn't care. Like, I've got to show up, and I've got to get that next fish. And like, it actually doesn't matter how sick or tired you are. It's like, that's the burden of being the provider. And so I use that, and I channeled that energy into this image. And I believe when you do that, when you create out of that, those feelings, there's just such a power that I didn't really care how well this did as a reel. And what's interesting to me is the people that it connected with obviously are the people who could relate. But this one never became viral, but the people that connected with it, super powerful, right? And so then you can start to connect the dots of, I'm creating something authentically. There's a story. Now, monetary attachment can go up, right? If you just see an image that you like, this is what I talk to artists about. That's why the authenticity is so important, because if I just drew this image, I thought it looked cool, and I put it on paper, the way I'm going to show up to create that image is going to be completely different when I talk about it, right? It's going to feel different tonight as I'm talking to you about it. It's going to feel different. And so maybe I'll pause here, Raleigh. We were joking earlier, so you'll notice behind Raleigh, if you move to the side, he's got a buffalo there. This is a print. He has the real one, and that's on you, Raleigh. We didn't sign off on any.
Yeah, I think that is a violation of my intellectual property. I don't know that you're
I know,
allowed
but
to
as
have behind you, actually.
hey, you went to a
I feel
fancy
like
law school. Why didn't you should have put that in writing? So
I feel like it devalues my piece actually a little bit.
But do you want to talk about maybe just like, again, just real quick, the story of the buffalo, and like I was so happy to do this piece for Raleigh, not just because he's a friend of mine and that I wanted to take his money, and he did pay me, but it was the way that he gave me that creative outlet. And so this will be something. If you do have artist friends, take a detour. But I think the story is pretty cool of like why
Yeah,
the
for me, the bison, the buffalo, just that. I mean, I that animal, the power of the animal and its nature to just go headlong into whatever storm is coming at it. That hit me at a time when I was going through I was going through storms on kind of all fronts, a business front, a relationship front, a health front of my wife, and and again, Johnny kind of helped pull me into this more creative side of myself. And one of the things that I do while I write is you're trying to channel the muse as best you can. And so you build little totems and little rituals in order to get yourself to face the demons that come out as you're trying to express your creativity. And so so Johnny was just starting to do these animals, and I was like, dude, it would be badass, like if like the bison has always meant something to me here. And for me, the important thing was I had such respect for I didn't I wanted Johnny to draw it however he wanted to. I didn't want to have a carbon copy of any picture that I had. I just sent him a couple of the images that inspired me in some way. And then I was like, have at it, dude. Do it however you want to do it. And again, it's like it's the background picture on my phone. It is something that I keep with me at all times. Obviously, I put it behind here because it's just it to me. It's the reminder of whatever storm I'm going through, and for me, the writing, my creative outlet, which is writing, is a painful process because you're trying to capture an emotion on a static page. And so the writing, the only writing that to me is worth doing is me trying to build peace within whatever storm I either find myself in currently or that I found myself in the past. And how did I navigate those storms? So it's the it's the totem that I call on while I try to write to give me the courage to either look in retrospect to the storms that I navigated in some way and how did I do that and how did I feel to try to for me there's no amount of money that I've made in business, there's no grade that I ever got through academia that feels as fulfilling to me as when someone tells me the way that you put into words something that I've always felt that I've never known how to articulate. And so when I do that through my writing, that is the most fulfilling compliment that I can receive. And so if I can help articulate someone's storm and give them some beacon of light through it, then whatever storm I had to traverse in order to be able to call on that emotion is worth it. And so that's why I had Johnny do it for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And it was fun. It was so fun because you were like, you said something to me like, do something different, like do something kind of weird. And that's actually on wood panels. So that was super fun. But let's I know I want to be mindful of time, but so just go back to me committing for those 15 minutes a day. I've like in hindsight, like even us doing this now and the fact that's impacting my day job and this outside, this is so fun. So things took off, started going viral. I kept tagging Blick Art Materials. They reached out and I've done multiple paid videos for them. I got my charcoal. Clint Pulver, he's a motivational speaker. He's an incredible drummer, helicopter pilot, and he and I connected. And I drew that piece for him. You can see down in the middle there. And he took me out on a helicopter. We did a photo shoot of apparel, his Heli Life apparel. So shout out to Heli Life. So I'm like on his website and apparel, and I kind of like it because I'm taller than him. That makes me feel good. But he's so cool. But to connect, and I'm like, oh, wow, if I did not start that art, like that opportunity would have been missed. I have taught adult classes I did an 8-week workshop series. You can see that down at the bottom. Chris Bosh, a famous Hall of Fame basketball player, is going through his own artist era, and he happened to follow me on one of it. And I've tried to exchange notes with him, and it is him. But like the top right is the co-founder of Nomadic, and I have rocked a Nomadic backpack for years. And I posted the Provider's Burden that I just showed you. I posted it, and you can see it behind him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the co-founder of Nomadic, this backpack, he is like, if he's on a Zoom call at his house, my art's behind him. And like, I just get so, it just makes me feel good. And now, granted that that's an outcome, but it's like, I created that piece not caring where it would go, and to see that that's the type of art that has actually gone forward has been really cool. And so again, you might wonder, like, okay, if I'm not an artist, like, what does this have to do with me? I think what it has to do with you is, what's your cave? Like, what's the thing that might be blocking you from being more creative? What are you afraid of doing or afraid of actually applying in your life? Think of it in less in terms of like, what's my art medium? And Raleigh teed this up earlier. I think the question is like, what's the skill, or maybe it's not a skill. Maybe it's a conversation that you've been avoiding having because it kind of scares you of what the outcome might be. It could be good. It could be bad. Oh yeah, go ahead.
The quote that I always have from the Gospel of Thomas, because it's been so impactful for me as, again, someone who I don't consider myself conventionally artistic, is, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And I can see the periods of my life where I have been suffering the most or the least fulfilled. There has been something sitting on my heart that I have a fear of bringing forth. And the medium of how you bring it forth, whether it's in a bear that captures the sadness of the provider's burden, or whether it's in a book that you feel like is the book that you've been called to write, the bringing forth of something is you expressing yourself, and bringing voice to what is happening in your life. And the medium of how that happens is the least important part. It's not about the technical painting of the brushes. It is about the courage that is required to bring the thing forth, and who you become when you tap into that. When you tap into that courage, you are creating a newer version of yourself that is more closely aligned with, I believe, who you were meant to be, and who I think all of us have some vague, ephemeral sense that it is who we always have wanted to be. And it just seems like our environment isn't allowing us to become it, but you must find the courage to bring it forth.
What was that word? That was a big word. It's vague.
Ephemeral.
Oh,
Ephemeral, out in the ether, non-concretized, not physical. It's very it will fade away.
thank you. I'm just a regular guy. Those big words. No, but I love that. I think that's super helpful. So these, we'll kind of get through here, and at the end, I'd love if there are any questions, but hopefully this is motivating for you in some way by hearing. So again, over the last 3 years, I've had so many people reaching out, mainly artists on my creative side, but this is not uncommon for my daytime job too when it comes to developing skills. The most common thing I hear is like, oh, that's so cute. That's so cute, your little art thing. I don't have the time for that. And there's a saying I'll say here in a minute, but hey, I don't have the time. The second is, it doesn't matter. Like, why does it matter? If I do that, no one else is going to like it. Or again, I have a lot of people who are quote unquote, I don't want to say we're old, but we've got more life experience. And there is this feeling of like, hey, if I hit my 40s, my 50s, my 60s, I'm too old. And, when you say that out loud and you just pause, it's like so ironic of like, why does that matter? But what I have said in response to these three themes, and I've made a number of reels that have done pretty well around that, is let's reframe what you're saying. And the first thing is, instead of saying that you don't have time, the more honest response would be, this is not a priority for me right now. And I think that's a really powerful thing to say out loud. So if you were to say, I don't have time to be creative, I don't have time to journal, I don't have time to understand myself, what I would say is rephrase it and say, this thing is not a priority for me right now. Because inevitably, what I'll do without telling them is I'll say, oh, interesting. I get it. Life's busy. Also, do you have a favorite like Netflix series or show that you watch? And like immediately, here's what I like. Here's what I was watching. And I'm like, okay, how much time how much time did that cost you, right? And so like they're like, oh crap. So or go to your social media app and like look at the time you spent on the day. So anytime I hear, this is my truth, going to law school while working full time and had incredible support from Ashley, like unbelievable support and holding down the kids, which I am eternally grateful for. But the reality is like you actually have time. You have time for the things that you want to prioritize. And that's okay. Just own that. Just own that, hey, watching Netflix for an hour tonight is the priority over me being creative. And as soon as you do that, I think people that are willing to honestly look at those things is that's where the difference becomes of what you're actually putting into your life. Your one unique life is what you're doing with your time. The second one, it doesn't matter. It goes back to that's a self projection, right? If you're creating or being creative because you enjoy it yourself, like what are the things you do? I used to use golf as an example. I had a hyper obsession with golf. I can't play worth crap at all anymore. But I'm always fascinated with hobbies. So I want each of you to think about a hobby that you are paying money for. Like I remember spending money to buy clubs, to go onto a course and get absolutely pissed and frustrated. Like I'm spending time and money to be pissed. Like it doesn't make sense. And like being creative a lot of the time actually doesn't cost anything and it's enjoyable. Now, there were moments that I love golf, but my point is if you're doing creativity in hopes that when you're done and that experience is over, that you then get validation, you're totally missing what we're talking about here. It's like, it's the actual enjoyment. Like I get goosebumps when I love watercolor pencils on a certain marker. It's a specific brand of paper. I love it. Like when the pencil is like the brush strokes, if you will, is like I enjoy that. And so I'm doing it for that enjoyment. The outcome is a secondary thing. And Rick Rubin talks a lot about that. And then the third and final, I'm 40 when I started this. How cool. I would love, and I'm like, okay, how long until I'm going to be a grandpa? I'm like, okay, 5 to 7 years, I could be a grandpa. That's a lot of time to get good at even better in my mind. I'm like, I want to get good at art because I want to be able to draw cool stuff for my grandkids. And I want them to remember me as an artist. And I'm like, I'll have 20 more years. When I'm 60, I'll have maybe 20 more years of drawing. Like that gets me fired up or even other. So I think it's just removing the labels and those restrictions because those are excuses. It's so easy to stay cold and safe. It's so easy to say, I'm not ready. It's so easy to say, I need to do my own kind of personal internalization. I'm not ready because it's safe. But the problem with safe is we're not bringing forth our true selves, right? We're hiding our authenticity. And that's at the expense, for me at least, I believe, of kind of losing your soul. And so then what I like to do in the corporate setting is the more you can kind of understand yourself, you can then apply your motivators and your day job actually gets more vibrant and more enjoyable. You get more curious about people, less judgmental. Like everything changes when you're owning kind of those excuses, in my opinion.
And another great thing about the honing a more creative, spending time to express and exercise a creative muscle. I've been in big like business masterminds, people running eight-figure businesses, executives. And one of the in this one particular group where we had like an executive coach, she went to Harvard, she was working at McKinsey, And so like these are corporate stuffed shirts. They're all very boring humans, which is why I left that world. No, I'm just kidding. They're great. But one of the first things that she would do, and it was always interesting to me, is before we would start in the mastermind, is she would pull up a painting, and she would make us all go around, and she would make us all tell a story about the painting, just like to get us out of this like totally logician, logical mind that you tend to foster in the business world, and move yourself over to create to a more creative side of thinking. Because the more that you foster creativity, and whether if you're running an organization or if you're figuring out how to make the extra dollar to pay for your kids' clothes, whatever. The quality of the ideas that come when you begin to express and exercise your creativity in your own life, it makes it so you can see different angles and different ways to do things. And it really, like I said, like we've talked about, it doesn't really matter the medium that you are expressing it. I've always found it interesting that even in most business of the business settings, I've had coaches that have tried to get us into a more creative way to solve problems. And just because creativity by definition feels it's a vulnerable feeling, because
Yeah.
you're leaving a very well trodden path, and you're going out into the unknown to make something up with your imagination. So if you have to look at a picture, and on a split second you have to create a story on the fly, for most business guys, that's a very uncomfortable thing to do, because it's not, you don't have a framing, you don't have a framing to rely on. And so you have
Yeah.
to rely on your imagination, which if you aren't in the habit of relying on your imagination when you need it to solve whatever problem you're facing, you may find yourself ill-equipped to the task at hand.
Yeah, love that. All right, I want to be mindful of time. So to close it down, here's what I'd say. Hopefully, this was just a little kind of teaser to help you think maybe differently about, I'd say, life in general, but just being willing to remove labels, and maybe don't be so harsh on yourself, and be curious about yourself. So think about it. What's a skill or experience that you are feeling drawn to that you've kept in the dark? What is your cave? And ideally, we would, take some time to do that. But maybe what Raleigh and I can talk about. So this isn't, now I say it probably incorrectly, the Ouroboros. It's I believe it comes from Viking lore, but the idea is it's a snake eating its tail, or in this case, it looks a little bit more like a dragon. And the idea is, the imagery is life and death, or birth and rebirth. The snake has to shed its skin in order to live or to survive. And I believe that is a principle that is true, is that we have to be willing to shed parts of ourselves to allow new parts of us to grow. And I believe all people in their heart are creative or creators. It just might be the form or medium that you're not familiar with, and that people need exercises, or if you can, either teachers or mentors or platforms, just like any education, in which I know Raleigh and we both have been very passionate about education and self-education. What I tell my kids is, if it has to do with health, education, or developing a skill or a talent, I will always have a blank check. If it's coming from them, I will find a way as a provider to support anything that meets one of those criteria. And I love this. Panda is where I have been living a lot of my life, and the Panda. So one of my gifts, that's a little bit more magical, is I can help people uncover their spirit animals. Raleigh gives me a hard time sometimes about this, but it's real. And I was living as a panda, which I love pandas, and the panda is very powerful imagery, but the panda represents black and white. It represents a clear delineation. The spirit of the panda is a strictness and adherence, which this little guy is not that. He's super fluffy and cute, but it's moving out of the panda and incorporating the yin and yang, which is more fluid, which honors and respects that there is black and white, but that there also is integration. In the very dark part of the yin and yang, there's light and dark on both sides, and it's really accepting all the good, but then also all the shadow parts of ourselves. And that as we do that, um, our lives become more authentic naturally, and you're going to gravitate and pull in those things that you're giving out. So this is my quote. Came to me one day. I tried to look up if anyone else has said it, but I really love it. And it is, when we do meaningful work, whatever that is in your life, that's when I feel free. That's when I feel like time just goes by. And I'm passionate about this bridge building. So I am hoping to be able to do this more, and I have more formal ways, and Raleigh does as well. So Raleigh, maybe I'll turn it over to you, but really everybody who stayed this long, thank you so much. This is something I love. And so I feel a little bit selfish that I took the hour. I hope you walk away inspired to do something, even if it's very, very small, different, and show up differently in your life and step a little bit closer into your authenticity.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the story, John. It was amazing. And like I said, you've been instrumental in me kind of going into my more artistic realm. And I think one of the things that Johnny and I are looking to do more, and one of the reasons why we wanted to do this call is because creativity is it's this super interesting thing where at its essence, it is a one player game. It is you with the muse and your own history and your own life trying to bring something forth. But at the same time, it almost always requires allies and people that can help you along the path, that can help you get along to it. Um, and my dog has been totally instrumental and as well, and so he wants to make his presence known as well. Um, and so something that Johnny and I are wanting to do in 2026 moving forward, that if you follow us on social media or whatever, however you got here is probably some function of that. We'll be talking more about um, helping people enter into those caves that they have been fearing to enter, to bring something forth to the world. And so one of the things that we're looking to do again in 2026 is to bring a cohort, is to have a group of people that we can um, help kind of face the demons that come out when you go into the cave that you find yourself in. Because Johnny and I, we kind of were that for each other unknowingly, unwittingly. And I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I'm so immensely proud of the book that I wrote. And it has nothing to do with how many copies ever sells. It has nothing to do with the outward performance. And so I'm gonna drop a little link here in the chat that if you are feeling called to a cave that you may not want to face totally by yourself, um, if you put in a little application, John and I are going to do calls with those who apply and just kind of hear what the
Yeah.
issues are and kind of craft.
Yeah, Rob, I just say, yeah, if you do feel like there's a cave, I think that it's important of having community. We would love to hear from you. We do, it's like complimentary intro consult with you to understand your situation, and then maybe it makes sense for you to be part of one of the cohorts in the future. But we're also interested in feedback as well. And so I think as well, we'll email the folks here that link. I think some we're dropping. I know we spent a little bit of time, but love the time and the forum. So thanks for setting that up, Raleigh.
Yeah, of course. And if there are any
Yeah, for
questions,
those that want to hang out, we're
yeah,
happy.
we're
We're good. We don't have lives, so outside of this, but
yeah, this is all we do.
but for those that need to drop, obviously it's your time. But we'd love to
Yeah.
if there are any questions.
Lisa said, I don't know if you can see it, Johnny. Lisa said, fantastic webinar, very motivational, inspiring. Thank you for sharing your story and your creativity, Johnny. You're
Oh,
never too old to create.
I wish we could drop her IG. Lisa is an incredible, incredible wildlife artist. So definitely connected with her over, I think, a couple the last few years. And I've got one of her prints that I am going to be hanging up. And so thank you so much, Lisa.
And for those who haven't dropped, we'll just keep talking until everybody
Yeah.
does. So if you feel like you have a cave, or if you feel somewhat creatively stuck, or if you feel like you've had a creative breakthrough, it doesn't have to be all bad news. It can be good news too. We're happy to hear about it. Um, or any other question. Jesse, I know, said earlier that the hosts are very hot, so thank
Oh,
you,
geez, Jesse.
Jesse. Um, I think, I think, again,
Well, I mean, for those that
go
are
ahead.
staying here, I do think I don't know that we talked about your story. So if you're familiar with airborne trampoline parks in Utah, um, that is this guy who created those. Like what I do think that would be interesting of like, because that was a creative venture as well. I mean, you literally created these, and not only that, but the labyrinth escape rooms. Like
Yeah, I
what
mean, I think
you to
I
that?
think I think the interesting thing about that story was that there was no part while I was doing it where I thought that I was creative. It just it I always thought of creatives as artists, as those who could draw or those who, made movies or sang or I thought of it as the performing arts was what creativity was. That those were the two that those were coterminous synonyms. And um and so for me, it was, and again, the pattern is the same, where for me, once I got into the practice, I was so excited to practice law. Um, and then once I got into the actual practice of law, the how much I hated the law firm was this cave that I found myself in that I had no idea how to extricate myself from. And again, when I got into that
Well,
cave,
but
good.
Raleigh, I think the thing that's crazy in your story, like you talk about law school and yes, he went to Chicago. It's just I guess a big deal for us regular people. We don't appreciate these
No,
things,
yeah.
but you had like I mean, it was essentially a religion in a way for you, right? Like you had family, like
Yeah.
that was it was almost like no choice for you to go to law school.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. I mean,
I mean, there was, but
when I left the practice of law, me and my father didn't speak for a couple years. Like he was livid that I had, he viewed the practice of law. Yeah, it was very much religious. Actually, when I left my religion, he had less of a strong opinion than when I left the practice of law. I would say it was
mm,
almost more important than the religion was. And really, I think that was because I was his only son that had kind of followed his footsteps into law. He had a daughter that did it, my older sister. And so, yeah, there was a lot of familial pressure and there was a lot of familial derision. They made fun of me a lot to go from the practice of law to such a stupid business venture of doing, nailing trampoline parks to a wall or trapping people into these little stupid escape rooms, and then trying and making money to have them get out. Um, so yeah, I would say universally made fun of in my family for throwing my life away to leave a very well-trodden, prestigious corporate path that I was very good at. I went to a very good law school. I was at one of the top law firms in the world. And so to throw off that brass ring for basically nothing, there was no
yeah,
I was doing it with no obvious outcome in sight was
yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Mm.
And go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I think I think one of the things that I learned in entrepreneurial creativity, we'll call it, is again, I think that there's this idea that creation or creativity means that you have to build a whole new world from scratch. And I think that I've been to I actually enjoy artists like writers much more than I do entrepreneurs because I just think that they're more intellectually honest. But even writers will my favorite writers, Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, which he wrote. He copied the framing of the Bhagavad Gita. Like uh, you can harness your creativity by iterating from something that already exists. It doesn't have
Yeah,
to
a
be a lot of
derivative
times
of
it can be
some type.
this very like intimidating process of like where do I even begin a blank page, and
Yeah.
I have to write War and Peace on my first attempt.
Well,
And that's not how professional artists do it. Not at all.
Yeah, Mitch McGarry says still like an artist. But I love that like if you think about it though, everything we do, I really like the idea though of a seed or a nucleus that exists first, and then like that's where I think if there's something you're drawn to already, spend time in it, and then add accent, add flair, and then over time you iterate enough, and then it becomes truly unique. So we've got a question from Brady, and actually I'd love to take this one because it's from Brady, and he says he's asking, knowing what we know now about being artistic and taking that principle to business, how would it have changed how you would have gone about the business? So, what I love about this question is everything now is flipped, and what I mean by that is I wish I'd spent more time understanding myself before going. I'm so thankful for the path I went down, but I'm maybe a way I'd reframe it is now when I think of who am I going to go into business with, I am looking for people who have that authentic passion and desire to bring forth a unique creation unique to them. So, Brady, I hope that hits home for you because when I see that, it's the Frida Kahlo is like, I'm now drawn to authentic pursuit of something being created that doesn't yet exist. So I believe that like in my day job, I subconsciously did that. I mean, I moved our family multiple times. I did education. Like I've intentionally tried, but it wasn't yet incorporating my full self. So I don't know what I'd do different because I think had I understood myself better, like spending time inward, and whether that's by the way, I've done therapy, a lot of reading, a lot of people with very very different unique backgrounds, and I don't know what I would have done differently other than I would have honored where my authenticity would have taken me, which is a way I'm trying to live now. But I want to find people who are so passionate about what they do that's a magnet to me that I'm going to feel a lot more confident in. And that ties into Jesse's question next is the courage to stay committed to your calling during the high times and low points. I'd say, I don't know. I'm trying. I don't have that one figured out. Like, I think we're trying to do that, but I'm finding when I'm authentic, I'm not drained at the end of the day like I used to be. My day job is extremely motivating for me. Like I find a lot of value, but it's because I'm showing up authentically now, and I try to not mask or minimize who I am, and that has shifted where I don't feel low like I used to because I'm willing to step into. I think the other thing that's hard and on an authentic way of living is you have to be comfortable with disapproval of others, which I've notoriously been terrible at. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think I think the calling for me is the only way that I can get through the hardest times and the low. Like I don't know. I think when you're in the hardest times and the lowest points, for if I were to articulate my calling at the moment, which and I think that your calling can iterate over time. If my calling is to bring words and to allow to help other people find their voice and to keep that voice through their hardest and lowest points, then I should expect hard and low points, and I should be willing to submit myself to the process of how do I keep my voice through these hardest and lowest points. And so for me, the calling is the gift that gets you through. It is the lighthouse that keeps me through the hardest and lowest points now. And I didn't have that always because when I was just entrepreneur and I was doing an escape room and a trampoline park business simply because it was a way to get rich. Um, when I had hard and low points that seemed to be an impediment to me getting rich, I had nothing to hold on to in a life-giving way. And now I feel like I can traverse, I mean, freaking knock on wood, like don't test me any further. I feel like I'm good on storms for a moment, but like I feel like it is the anchor in the storm. The calling is the anchor in the storm, and sometimes the storm is what guides you to that calling. And I think once you have it, once you feel like if you define the calling as it is the message that sits on your heart that you have to find the courage to express. Um, the question is, if you let go of that, what else do you really have? Like
Yeah.
what else? You're letting go of it for what? And because everything else can fall by the wayside. And that's, I think your body can fall by the wayside, your relationships can fall by the wayside, your wealth can fall by the wayside. Everything else is totally, there's some part of it that is not within your control. You staying committed to your call, whatever that is, it's from my vantage point, it's the only thing that you really have. And if you let go of that, you're letting go of it to what end would be the question that I would have. And so, I mean, that's the way I think about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we've been going strong here. Again, thank you to everybody. So I don't know, Raleigh, if we want to keep riffing just the two of us. Hey, we'll be transparent right now. Another reason we wanted to do this is content creation. So don't underestimate if you are a content creator, B-roll, or Raleigh and I taking a little bit of the time to have the aesthetic set up here so that as we're talking, we'll be able to clip some of these later for ourselves. So again, I don't want people to feel like they have to hang out, but if to the extent they're finding it interesting, we'll probably keep talking a little bit more. So do you want to talk a little bit about, because the other thing I think you have a ton of experience in, I only do with my art account, is monetizing social media. That's one that I guess I was surprised to find out on Instagram, like when I had a reel hit 10 million views, and it was like, I looked at the monetization and it was like $5. And I was like, this is not what I thought. Now, I know other long form content, YouTube is a different story on how they pay out with those views, but like, I guess any words of advice for people that are content creators and monetization. And then you've got a circle of people who are also in the influencer space. So I think that's just a super interesting topic.
Yeah, I think monetizing through the platforms is probably the most difficult way to monetize. I think I think of it like if you're sharing, if you're being creative, if you're sharing something and people are following that for some reason, there's likely some. I think the best way to monetize is usually through digital products, courses, helping people become like you, helping the people that are a couple of years behind you become like you are at this moment right now, and making sure that you're finding people that can pay for that, and that you're solving a problem that they'll pay for. Um, and I think the other beautiful thing of expressing yourself and share, and for me it's been a very unnatural. I did not start naturally. My wife was the one who did it, and I saw her do it for many years. It was a very uncomfortable thing for me to share and express in that way. And so I guess the only reason why I'm saying that is that if it does not come naturally to you, you're in good company. It did not come naturally to me. It's simply a process of finding. I feel very awkward if I try to copy the way that my wife did it, where it's like, this is so great. Like for you, you just have to find the way that you express yourself and the message that you want to share with the world. For me, again, I like probably being more of a teacher and teaching things that have been helpful for me and sharing. I use it as practice to try to articulate the stories that are difficult for me to articulate in a simple 1 minute fashion, because I can be long-winded, as I am being long-winded in this answer right now. And the other thing is, if you feel like, oh, I don't know what I would possibly say, I'm not an expert on anything, you don't have to always be the expert. You can be the interviewer. I came on, I don't know anything about art, so I'm interviewing Johnny and I'm learning on my own and I'm sharing that. You just have to be interested. And it's much easier to be interested than it is to be interesting.
Yeah.
And you can bring on interesting people and connect with them.
Well,
And go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think what you've done well, you are you just post the thing. Like what I've seen is you are willing to put it out there, like that entrepreneur. I think you and I we come very different backgrounds. I've been in big, large corporate. The programs I've been involved strategically with and helping do take months, maybe even years to complete. And like even with us with this, it's like you're ready to just go and like figure it out on
Whether
the
it works
way.
or it doesn't work.
Well, but it's powerful because you cover more territory, right? And then, but I think there is a balance depending on where you're at in the business cycle. So for those who are interested in monetizing a social media, especially artists, I'm always like, and by the way, I'm not even fully there. It's like, do you feel like you have uh, a product that you're proud of? And I think for me, that's the big thing is if you have something that you believe you're passionate about, even if it's not complete or a concept, that will come through in your social. What I find is people are wanting the reward without having the product. So I mean, that's the lottery mentality. It's like, which by the way, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm manifesting that abundance. And so when it happens, you'll know that I manifested it. But we want, I used to joke about this as a kid. And okay, not as a kid. This is still true for me. I used to be like, watch movies. I'd be like, it'd be so cool to be like an actor and like get to be in like whatever that superhero, being Clark, last name of Clark Kent, Superman, Dark Heroes. I always thought like, how cool if like one day like a producer just saw me on the street and like hires me to be a famous actor and like,
yeah.
I wanted to not have to do the work. Like I wanted the magic of being uniquely discovered. And I think in business and in art, the reality is you have to put yourself out there. You have to actually engage. Yeah. You have to be willing. And so that's where I go back to that, like moving forward without fear of, I'm not going to do this thing. And I'm going to just keep talking for the people. I'm not going to do this thing. And then you'll come up with all the reasons why. It's like, it's not now. It's not time. What if somebody else sees it? Or you think of like, usually it's like your closer friends when you put something out there and you're like, okay, these people are totally going to give me a hard time. Then block those, then block those friends if you need to. But the idea that somehow magically like abundance is just going to show up at your door without you having to like put yourself out there. I think that's kind of a dangerous.
So I call that Cinderella syndrome, where you just hope Prince Charming comes and gives you the gold slipper, the crystal slipper. I don't know what color the slipper is, but I need to look that up. But and I see, yeah, there's and I had the same thing when I was practicing law. I hope that I was like, I went to a great law school. I hope that some entrepreneur is like, hey, you should be the CEO of my company without me having to do any work, just because I was able to bubble in the right little bubbles on a Scantron on a couple tests, that I should be able to run a Fortune 500 company or whatever. And yeah, I think that it is a function of, even if you look at, even if you confine yourself to the business realm, who's one of the best business investors ever? Warren Buffett. And what does he do? He writes a letter. Like he writes a letter annually, and he would buy newspaper. Like he would express himself constantly and constantly be putting himself out there. And he say again.
Well, but like what I would counter my the devil's advocate brain is like, I also see Warren Buffett's life, and I'm like, I don't want that. Just from
Sure.
like, and now granted, money's cool and investors cool, and it's like, yeah, but like, I don't know. I want to like have my shirt covered in charcoal and someone to walk into my art studio and just see all of this. Yeah, I guess my point is there's this mindset of making money. Like I think Warren Buffett's art, what his creation is how he goes about learning about the business.
Investing. Yeah, 100%.
Yes, like that's his creative outlet. And we see that and we want like I guess the question for me that I finally realize is not what I want is money the thing? Maybe, but what does money represent? It represents experiences. In my life, I am driven by experiences. And as I'm living authentically, I'm having way more rich experiences by withholding judgment. And now I'm getting this wealth of experience that's not actually costing me any money. So it's just a way to reframe.
Yeah.
So anyways, that not to take you off course, but it's like sometimes we idolize, like Brady's got a good question here. Maddie came in late. What's a book or podcast to maintain sparks of creativity? For me, it's always like, who are the people that I admire the way that they're living? And that's who. So I know you mentioned earlier to me, we were talking the art. You want to maybe touch on that? what is it? The artists, the book that we
Oh,
were just talking about.
yeah, there are a couple. And for Maddie, I think The Artist Way is one that this is great. Kind of talks about creativity. Every time that I start a new writing project, I'll read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, who was a screenplay writer. And, it talks about the creative process and the resistance that comes up in your life as you embark on a creative endeavor, the resistance that almost immediately kind of hits you. Um, I would also really study The Creator's Call by Raleigh Williams, which is all about how to break free from the default path and unleash the creator within. I mean, those are really, I would say that that's
Yeah.
the Mount Rushmore of creativity in terms of books is mine and these other no, The Artist Way and The War of Art. um, I would say, and Rick Rubin, A Creative Act is another like really great one. And I would also say for me, it's if you just start paying attention to what is the reading where you feel inspired. When I read Ralph Waldo Emerson on self-reliance, or Nassim Taleb, I'm so inspired on how courageously they write. They like, he says, if I am the devil's child, then I will do the devil's work. And he said that in the 1800s.
He says
Like
that though.
he says that though. And so the boldness, and so I just whoever I'm like, so I want to write in a bold way like Ralph Waldo Emerson did. I want to write and I just want to just totally um, destroy people like Nassim Taleb does, and he just demolishes them. And so it's just
Damn,
starting
bro,
to pay
be
attention
nicer.
to say again.
I said, damn, bro, be nicer. But that's just you.
That's not who inspired. It just I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I get what
say
you're
what I
saying.
want to. I'm gonna be bold in what I say. Otherwise, it's not worth saying. That's kind of because I need that energy in order to get through the pain of writing. And it's whoever inspires you of who you want to aspire to be. For me, it's those people. For you, it can be someone else. Chris Nolan's movies. Those are inspirational to me. And so I'm sure Johnny, you have artists that you're like, damn, I want to capture the thing in the way that they capture the thing. I want to do it that way. And that gives you kind of like a pole star to kind of start kind of trying to follow in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all good. Yeah, Robert Greene, Rick Rubin, for sure. I also think there's probably a gap in female representation in this space, and so I'm like really passionate about even like Frida's work of how amazing it is. And there's a number of Nice Nin. There's a number of it's so interesting. So many of these poets and artists, their lives are actually fairly controversial, but the art itself, but I think it just highlights kind of that battle we have of living a life of authenticity and just understanding by its very nature, being authentic or true to self naturally repels what isn't on that same frequency. But if you don't reveal your true frequency, then you're showing up with either no frequency or a mimic of someone else's. And even if everyone approves, quote unquote, of you, what you're doing is you're masking the real version of you. And therefore, you'll never find self acceptance and you'll never really feel accepted by others. And I'm not a pro at that. I just know that that's a big opportunity as an artist. Is like I talk to other artists. There's so many of us. They're like, oh, I really want to do this kind of art, but maybe it's spicy, or maybe it's on this kind of weird topic, or we want to be bigger. But I think social and sharing it kind of doesn't. It takes it's a higher threshold to get across and get over that, and that's why for me it's just like taking each step instead of going all the way to an extreme. Is like, am I taking steps that are getting me closer to being like fully authentic?
Yeah. I think that I think that people will, if you don't do the work to show up authentically, um, people will approve it. I mean, you will get approved of and you will get overlaid. People will put their agenda on you and you will, in this book, it's like the plague of the day is conformity, and a true man must by definition be a nonconformist. because he needs to follow his inner call wherever that takes him, and he needs to be okay to be disapproved. That is kind of the cost of admission. Um, and so I think that, sharing yourself creatively is the antidote to that conformity, and is the path towards your authenticity.
Hey, again, thank you everyone that attended. You're so kind that stayed this long. And we're happy to answer any questions on social or wherever. So have a good night.
See ya. Peace.